Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US politics update where I'm going to be pretty strident in my criticism of, well, essentially the Trump administration and the Republican Party that's at the moment facilitating its outright hypocrisy. Some staggering hypocrisy, and I'm not going to hold back. I have been reporting on the reaction to the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk that took place recently. And we don't really know who did it, as in, well, there are some claiming that Tyler Robinson didn't do it, actually, but we don't really know the motivation behind it. There's been a lot of silence where you would expect huge amounts of leaked information if it had a hugely obvious political bent. And the same can be said about previous killings that have taken place as well. The ICE detainee shooter that supposedly had anti-ICE written on a bullet, but then doesn't appear to fit that mold. And then we had the shooter of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, that, you know, we've heard nothing about for the best part of the year. Just, it appears that these incidents have given ammunition, I guess pun intended, to the Republican right to attack the left as being at fault here for all this outrageous rhetoric, even though the rhetoric from the right is insanely hateful. Every time they accuse the left of using terms like fascist and Nazi, you look back and the people who've accused the left of that have used those terms themselves, and it's just hypocrisy all over the shop. But anyway, I want to talk about what has just happened in Michigan. So somebody drove a vehicle into a church and then shot up people inside, killing 4 and injuring 8 others, and then shot themselves. The building was then, I presume, set ablaze on purpose, but I'm not 100% sure. This was a church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so a Mormon church in Grand Blanc in Michigan, 60 miles northwest of Detroit. And it happened during a Sunday service attended by hundreds of people. So the suspect is this chap called Thomas Jacob Sanford, a 40-year-old from Burton, Michigan. And he was later shot dead by police at the building's car park. I thought he shot himself, actually. No, shot dead by police. Anyway, authorities are investigating the incident as an act of targeted violence, but say the motive remains unclear. Now, it's interesting because when these previous shootings have taken place, like straight away, you have had elected officials from the GOP, government officials, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, all these people shouting about how this is a hateful left, blah, 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 straight away before information was sort of found out. And there's been abject silence. In fact, this appears to be the sum total of the government's response to this. Just an awful situation in Michigan. FBI is on the scene and the entire administration is monitoring things. Say a prayer for the victims and first responders. That's J.D. Vance, whereas previously he'd been shouting about how this is the left and blah, 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 blah. As someone says below, funny how different your take is on this than it was on the Charlie Kirk killing. Why no comment on his apparent political orientation? So it turns out that Sanford is very much a Trump supporter, with here wearing a T-shirt, Trump 2020, Liberals Cry Again, or Make Liberals Cry Again, I think it says on the T-shirt. We have someone who is clearly a Trump supporter. The LDS Mormon church terror shooter Thomas Jacob Sanford, confirmed to be from a hardcore MAGA and Charlie Kirk fanatic family. An investigation is needed to verify if Trump's recent violent rhetoric against US civilians triggered the attack or altered the shooter's mental state. Yeah, that'll never happen. We all knew it was stupid for J.D. Vance and other Republican leaders to claim that violence only comes from the left. We didn't have to wait long to be proven right, says this source. Thomas Jacob Sanford has been identified as the LDS shooter and arsonist. He was a former Marine and Trump supporter. This is the vehicle he drove into the church. As you can see, flags flying on the back. Not that necessarily indicates 100% what this person is, but then when he has a Trump Vance sign on the Google Earth images of his property, then you can probably think he is of a certain political persuasion. And apparently his social media places have been sites of huge numbers of pro-Trump memes and etc. etc. So yeah, here you go. This is who he is, and there is abject silence from the right here. Immediately after the Michigan church shooting, Trump implied that the gunman was an anti-Christian leftist, but we now know the shooter was a white Iraq war veteran, wore a Make Liberals Cry Again shirt, set fire to a church, killed 4 people, it turns out now. This was no leftist attack. It was a homegrown radicalized attack from the right. Trump lied again, says this source, Brian Allen, when Trump said, "I've been briefed on the horrendous shooting that took place in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan. The FBI is immediately on the scene and will be leading the federal investigation and providing full support to state and local officials. The suspect is dead and there's still a lot to learn. This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians." So he's now making this an attack on Christians in the United States of America. The Trump administration will keep the public posted, as we always do. In the meantime, pray for the victims and their family. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately. Now, rather absent from that, other than it being an attack on Christians, is any kind of political, I don't know, you would expect a political attack on the left, but he doesn't have that because, of course, he can't do that here. He must have been alerted that this guy was unlikely to be coming from the left, but appears to be attacking from a position on the right. A recap on this terrible tragedy in a Mormon church in Michigan. The shooter, Thomas Jacob Sanford, is a veteran and not trans, not an immigrant, just a straight white man. And for the people saying that Christianity is under attack, i.e. Donald Trump, there have been 700 school shootings in the past 10 years versus 15 church shootings. I'd say our children are more at risk than the churches. But you don't hear Trump saying our children are under attack. A shooting in Utah, shooting in Texas, shooting in North Carolina. Most shooters are Republican white males. Actually, it was interesting that on the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, that there was a school shooting in Boulder, Colorado, and the kid was a neo-Nazi fascist. And then that just went under the radar, possibly because no one died in that shooting. I think 2 children were injured. But yeah, again, double standards, absolute double standards. Where is the Republican outrage of their own guy shooting up a church? So 4 people died here. You would expect there to be a reaction that's 4 times the size of the Charlie Kirk reaction. No. Okay, Charlie Kirk was a famous guy. These people in the church weren't famous. Charlie Kirk was a sort of cheerleader for the Republican right, and he was assassinated doing that cheerleading. So, okay, we can imagine there's going to be a greater amplification of the response to Charlie Kirk dying. But my goodness, it's like chalk and cheese here. You know, as soon as it's uncomfortable, let's not hear about it. Let's just not really report much on this. Oh, it's a little bit uncomfortable. And you get these muted responses from Vance that says essentially nothing in terms of the sort of rhetoric that he would previously have said. And then Donald Trump says his piece, but it's not exactly full of the rhetoric that we're used to with Donald Trump. It is a fairly muted response from him. There's no political invective, so on and so forth. So it's just incredible that we are seeing such a juxtaposition of reactions depending on who is responsible. So 2 mass shootings involving US Marine Iraq war veterans have taken place within 24 hours. Nigel Edge identified as a suspect in Southport, North Carolina shooting, and Thomas Jacob Sanford identified as a suspect in the LDS church shooting in Grand Blanc. But the reactions to 2 shootings, are they on par with the reaction to the Charlie Kirk shooting? No, not at all. And this guy drove into a church, shot up the congregation, killed 4 people, injured 8 people. I mean, this is a mass shooting. And then was shot himself as the church burnt down. And the reaction from Fox News, I don't see it as anywhere near the reaction to Charlie Kirk. Now, there was I think because the Charlie Kirk incident was caught on camera, there's a lot of video feed, and you actually saw him essentially die, the blood pouring out of his neck in a really visceral, horrific way. That will have added to the public outcry and a visceral reaction to that killing in a way that this wasn't caught on camera. And so, thankfully, and so it will not get that social media traction. It seems so horrible to say that we live in this social media world where videos of death get traction and can lead to a much greater reaction to a killing like Charlie Kirk's, and yet here, arguably a much worse killing in terms of like 4 people killed, 8 people injured, and then the shooter dying. It's not going to feature nearly as much. And I just find there to be a rank hypocrisy in particularly the Republican reactions to the Trump administration reactions to these horrific incidents. And then you start thinking, well, were they pearl clutching with Charlie Kirk? Was it a case of like mass hysterical virtue signaling and political opportunism? When you look at, and I reported on this, when you look at the memorial service being a political rally, because they had signing up registration tables for the Republican Party, where Benny Johnson and others were saying, we're going to register more people here than blah, blah, blah. The left don't know what's going to hit them. This is the death of the Democrats. Nothing to do with Charlie Kirk and the life of Charlie Kirk. They were seeing it as a political rally. And then Trump gets up and gives a political rally speech. Just outrageous. And I said so at the time. And then you get a shooting like this, and the reaction is incredibly muted. I don't know. There is a gun problem in the United States. That much is obvious. What you do about it, that's a lot more complex. But playing around with the data, when the data is fairly obvious and well analysed, is frustrating. I think we're getting an unfair reaction to these killings that I think illustrates a huge degree of political opportunism. Anyway, that's my initial thoughts. Let me know what you think. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.